Church hurt is real. When trust is broken in a place we thought was safe, the wounds cut deep. But God never leaves us in the pain. He invites us into healing, restoration, and freedom. That's where we're going today, into the honest conversation about spiritual wounds and the hope that only His will can bring. Welcome back, guys, to the Champion Life Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Norwood, and today is episode 4 of season 5. I'm so excited because today our topic is all about church hurt, real hurt, and how we can navigate church hurt and kind of the experiences that people go through in this life. Because guess what? We are the body of Christ, and sometimes the body of Christ act like people, and people are imperfect. So today we're going to be talking about that. And I have a special guest with us today, Kaya Garcia. Kaya, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
So glad you're here. Listen, well, Kaya, can you kind of like tell me a little bit about like, what do you like, when you hear the phrase church hurt, what comes to mind for you personally?
I think immediately just people misrepresenting Christ, people not bearing the image of Christ well as we're supposed to as Christians. I don't know, every time I've talked to somebody, it's usually something that their pastor has said, or how like the church as a building has like handled certain situations, and I always just fall back on, Christ would not do that, and we're supposed to bear His image well, but we're also imperfect, so it just happens.
Absolutely. And whenever I think about church hurt, right? I think about, how, there's different types of church hurt, right? You have, leadership abuse, right? You have, betrayal, right? You have, this judgment culture. You have conflict and neglect, and so many of these different things, right? Kind of encompass, church hurt as a whole. Sometimes, like, the thing is, like, people, they're like, man, like the church hurt me because someone that professed to know Christ said something, or someone that professed to know Christ, right, didn't live the lifestyle that they said, right? Yeah. And so that causes a lot of hurt. It causes a lot of damage, and it causes a lot of heartache. And so, my question for you is this: like, what was one of what's one of the hardest parts about navigating pain coming from a trusted community like the church?
I think, like you were saying, it's the betrayal. I think we put a lot of trust in other people, especially that's what the world, tells us to do. Some parts of the world, they tell you, you only have yourself, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm not supposed to trust anybody. And then when you finally kind of break that shell, and you go into it, and then somebody turns their back on you, it's like, well, now what? Well, then now this person represents all of Christianity, and now I have to, steer clear of it. I think that when it comes to kind of overcoming it, is that what you're asking, kind of? Like,
yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think it really just has to do with like the meeting somebody else who does bear the image of Christ well. And if not, just, I think it really depends on how willing you are to pursue Christ aside from people. Cause there's been so many reasons for me to leave certain churches, but because of my want to focus on my faith and like to push forward, and me knowing that I needed to be somewhere, that's what allowed me to stay. And that's what allowed me to, instead of running away, to ask questions and things like that. So I think it does kind of have to do with your own willingness, and your own like want and desire to pursue Christ. But it also definitely has to do with people, finding people who do bear the image of Christ well, because obviously if you've only seen one version of Christianity, then I would want to stay clear too, but I've seen all sides. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. Come on. That's a very good perspective. And I really like how you said that, like, you have to like pursue it for yourself, and not you can't amount something up that's negative, like say, hey, listen, that person hurt me at that church, and so now all churches are like that, all people are like that, all believers are like that, right? Because that's not true. Yeah. And listen, there are some believers there are some people out there that profess to know Christ that have bad attitudes, right? That don't live the life, right, of Christ, that say hurtful things. And like one thing that the Lord showed me, as I was kind of preparing for this episode, back in early July, is like the thing about church hurt that people fail to realize is that it's not about Jesus.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because Jesus is perfect.
Mhm.
But the people that are the church are imperfect. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
you have to think about that. Like, hold on. Like, I'm in the world. I'm in a community that are full of people that are imperfect,
Yeah.
trying to reach perfection, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And I
good.
think, yeah, and I think when we understand, like, listen, people are imperfect. They're gonna say
Mhm.
things like they're gonna get on my nerves. They're gonna like they're gonna mess up. They're gonna say
Mhm.
some things that like I'm like, hold on, whoa, why would you say that,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
like their actions are sometimes gonna fall short. They're gonna sin, and when we understand that, like, listen, church hurt is not about Jesus being imperfect because he's
Mhm.
perfect and he never
Mhm.
changes and he's good. It's
Yeah.
about the imperfect people that are trying to live for Christ and they
Yeah.
mess up. And so how do you see through a different lens of like, man, I don't want to go to church anymore, or I don't want to be a part of a community anymore because apparently people of faith don't act right. People of faith
Mhm.
don't really love truly. But
Mhm.
guess what? We have to understand that church hurt is real hurt. Like church hurt
Mhm.
is real hurt.
Yeah.
Listen, because like words harm people, right? Words
Yeah, for sure.
scar. And so,
Mhm.
and so when we think about words and what people say, because I believe that those are the most powerful things. The Bible talks about there's power in our tongues, right? Of a
Mhm.
blessing or a curse, right? Or of life or death. And so when you think about maybe like people's words, coming from a believer or a faith community, like what kind of impact has that made on your life personally?
Um, I think both negative and positive. I grew up not in a church, but people of authority in my life had been a part of their churches and had gone
Hmm.
every once in a while, and I definitely saw the beauty side of it. When I was a kid and I would go to Trinity sometimes, people kept telling me this guy named Jesus loved me, and that made me super excited. But I think that where the hurt came in was like, it was like, what else? Like, what's beyond that? And then, I also saw like kind of the negative side where people who I trusted and knew were high up in the church, when they would act a certain way behind closed doors and where nobody else is
Hmm.
watching besides me and my siblings, that was, I think, the scarier part, because those are, I think it's almost worse when it's like family, because those are people who you're supposed to be trusting.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I definitely, I agree with you. Like church hurt is very real. Like we can say all we want. Like, it's not about Jesus, it's about people, but people suck a lot of the times. I mean, that's why we need Jesus. Like, I
Come
don't,
on.
you know what I mean? So yeah.
Absolutely. That's yeah. I mean, that's what people like people sometimes are just aren't good people, you
No.
know? And you have people in the church, that come with their opinions, their
Mhm.
mindsets, their hearts, right?
Mhm.
Their desires and right, and you're trying to be in this community of faith and grow together. And
Mhm.
sometimes growing together causes strain, growing together
Yeah.
causes pain, growing
Oh
together
yeah.
it calls for a process. Uh-oh.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so and you're like, hold on, like I thought this was and a lot of times what people kind of get misconstrued a little bit is the safe place. Like,
Yeah.
yes, the church is supposed to be a safe place, but it's also a place for people that are wounded.
Mhm.
It's also for
Yeah.
people that
Amen.
that are broken
Mhm.
and just need help. And so
Mhm.
we have to kind of balance that. Okay, like listen, I know that I'm in a safe place, and I know that this place that I come together and assembly together for worship or community or services or whatever it is, small groups. I know
Mhm.
that I'm coming to this place that we gather, but I'm gathering with people that are imperfect. Like, again, back
Yeah.
to the imperfect people. Like
Yeah.
I'm gathering with
Yeah.
people that come with motives. I'm gathering
Mhm.
people that like and like and our hope is that people will come with unity, right?
Mhm.
With a same heart, with the same mindset to grow, right? And again, in the church, again, let's touch on this topic a little bit. Like, there's some gossip. Like, there's gossip.
Oh yeah.
There's
Yeah.
gossip. There's backstabbing, and the
Mhm.
thing is, like, it shouldn't happen in the church. But guess what? It's the reality of it.
Mhm.
It's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for someone listening to to this podcast, carrying wounds, what's
Mhm.
one step you'd encourage them to take?
Um, I think learning the Lord's character. Um, when I think church hurt is really, really, really hard when you're younger, because a lot of the times we kind of feed on other people's faith, and so it's really easy for us to say, how they're representing Christ is exactly how he is. And we know that's not true. I mean, we live in our flesh, like we're going to make mistakes, but I think like even for me that was one of the first steps I had to take. I had to learn about Jesus for myself. I had to see like who this guy was, why we loved him so much, why he loved us so much. I had to see how he acted, and I had to come to understand like that is impossible for us. Like the whole understanding like Jesus and the sacrifice that he was for us, that kind of changed my perspective into like we really like that's why we need him. Like the whole reason that
Yeah.
I'm trying to leave the church, like that's exactly why we need him. So definitely learning the Lord's
Come on.
character, I think, is the most important thing. So
Yes, that's really good. And I think when we understand the Lord's character, it'll
mhm.
better it'll better help it'll help us better to understand people, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you know, and I think a lot of times
yeah, that's
people
good.
equate God's character with human character, but that's
Yeah,
totally different. You
yeah.
like you can't like they're not on the same playing field, right? Like
Mhm.
God's character is not the same as someone at my church, like because again
Mhm.
God is perfect, right? He's
Yeah.
perfect in love, he's perfect in grace, he's perfect in mercy, he's perfect in who he is, right?
Mhm.
And people try to meet that, but they fail constantly. They fail
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Now, listen, there are going to be some people in our life that are just amazing, like youth pastors, pastors,
Mhm.
mentors, whatever it is, small group leaders that are, man, like they are a role model for me that I can
Mhm.
live after, that I can look up to, that I can try to, shape my life after because
Mhm.
they resemble Christ. And so when we think about emotional, the emotional, reality of this, there is, some emotion that kind of run through our mind and our body and our
Mhm.
heart. And so, how spiritual wounds affect trust in God, in prayer life, and community involvement. Because a lot of people, right, especially in our generation, like this entire season of our podcast is about
Mhm.
young people, right? Young adults, in college, in the
Yeah.
workforce, whatever. And this topic was like, oh my gosh, it's so good because a lot of young people, they don't want to be involved in the community, in the faith-based community because they feel like, that they've sinned too much or people are going to
Mhm.
judge them too much or, they can't come as they are. But like, that's not what Christ wants. Like
Yeah.
he says, come as you are, but you won't leave as you are. My
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
right?
Amen.
And come on. But the thing is, like, that's what the church is for. A church
Mhm.
is for the refuge. It's a
Mhm.
refuge, right? It's
Mhm.
it's a place where people can find forgiveness and freedom and healing. And so
Mhm.
why do you think so many people like in our generation, young adults, they don't want to be in community. They don't want to trust in God or they don't really want
Mhm.
to have a prayer life.
Um, I think again, if you've only seen a certain version, it's kind of hard to see another when it feels. I think the number one thing that messes people up is like the hypocrisy of it all,
Mm-hmm.
because when you look at a church and all these people are saying I follow the Lord and I'm trying to be like the Lord and then they're not like the Lord, obviously you're gonna be like, what? And then I think it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself to like fully surrender to Christ and fully pursue Christ. Because what if that ends up being you? Like how you
Mm,
can't, that you can't maintain a perfect character. You've seen it happen before, so I think it adds to that pressure of like, what's the point of going into it if I'm going to fail. Like I think that's the hardest part about Christianity and being a disciple in general is knowing that you're going to fail. That's a really, really hard reality to come to. Um,
yeah.
and also for some people when it comes to like, I don't want to have a prayer life, I don't want to read because what if it doesn't work? Like I think we have
Come on.
this idea that when it comes to Christianity, if we get into our word and if we're praying enough and doing all of this, like that makes us a true Christian and everything's going to be perfect. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's not. But in order to
Come on.
fully pursue Christ, you have to understand that because I didn't understand that. And so even now, sometimes I'm like, dang, like I read and I prayed the day before and it was a good day, but then things suck the next day. And that's just a continuous cycle of my life. Like there's going to be good, there's going to
Yeah.
be bad, but I don't know. I think it's just a lot of pressure when it comes to failing and having to understand like that the whole reason that we have Christ is because that's who we are. We fail constantly. So hypocrisy and pressure, I think those are like number one. Those are up there. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've seen that like in my own life too. Like what you said, like kind of that cycle. Like, all right, Lord. man, like, man, Sunday service was fire, man. Come on, the
Yeah.
pastor preached the house down. Come on, worship was phenomenal. Like, I felt your Holy Spirit, man. I've been
Mhm.
in my word, man. You've been showing me signs and wonders, but today's not a good day,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
I failed, man. Like today, I messed up, and so I feel like a lot of times, like this, like yes, there's a standard, and we're trying to reach the standard, like we're
Mhm.
like we're pressing toward the mark, all right, of the
Mhm.
multi calling of God in Christ Jesus. Like that's like we're pressing towards the mark, and we're trying to reach this perfection, like we're trying to reach this relationship with Christ, and so, but and I think like a lot of times, again, like you said, hypocrisy. Like you see so many Christians, bro. So many
Yeah.
people like, listen, I'm like, and something that's like bugging me so much is like, I don't listen at this point. I don't care if you have a verse in your bio on Instagram,
Mhm. Oh
because
yeah.
if your
Nuh-uh.
life, doesn't show it, the verse,
Yeah.
that's just a number and some letters.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
so yeah. Amen.
Like there's no
I
substance
agree.
to it. But and again, like a lot of people, they don't see Christianity as something serious, or even
Mhm.
believe in God as something serious, because they're like, hold on, the people that say they're Christians, they ain't living
Mhm.
like it. So why
Mhm.
would I do it? Like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're doing this and doing that, and living like they want to live. So
Mhm.
what's the point of it? And I believe. And I believe if our generation, if young adults right now in 2025, right, would stand up and be bold and live this
Mhm.
life for real, right,
Mhm.
and be holy. What is holy? Being separate, set apart, right?
Yeah.
If we would just be
Exactly.
holy and set apart, come on,
Mhm.
and just and be just a little different, and we would
Mhm.
change the world. But again, when people see believers not living like they should,
Mhm.
but then you want to say, hey, dude, you're a sinner, you're worldly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another form of church hurt, because you're not being Christ.
Mhm.
So listen, we're talking about vulnerability, and there's a bigger picture
Mhm.
to this. And we know that there's redemption, right? And some people have been hurt, whether it's physically by people in the church.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we're seeing today that, we have these big name pastors, right? Of these mega churches.
Mhm.
And listen, what's done in the darkness is going to come to light. And we
Mhm.
see these pastors and people that have such big platforms. They're being arrested for sexual
Mhm.
assault. They're being arrested for misconduct. And like
Mhm.
that's church hurt. Right?
Mhm.
These things break churches apart. These things destroy foundations, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so how do we come to a place of healing from this? We're like, man, like, hold on. Like that guy I've been watching for years. You're like,
Yeah.
man, like that person, like I've been listening to him for years, listening to her.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's both sides,
Mhm.
but that's church hurt, because you destroy the integrity of
Mhm.
a church. You destroy the integrity of people's faith because of poor leadership, of poor
Mhm.
choices, of poor human sin, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, what do you think is kind of like the process, or the path to healing from that? When we think about
Uh.
churches and these scandals and all
Mhm.
this stuff.
I think we put a lot of, which yes, we should. The Lord has placed certain people in certain places for a reason. But I think a lot of people, their relationship with Christ is not with Christ, it's with their pastor, or it's with
Mm,
a podcast, or it's with
come on,
their favorite song. And I think
come
that's
on.
that's where we get it all wrong. Like the whole point of growing in your relationship with Christ is to be more like him and to learn about him and to grow in your love for him. But instead of doing it for yourself, a lot of people try to feed off of only what their pastor says on Sunday, or only what they heard on a
Wow.
podcast one time, or like for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, TikTok is their Bible, and that's wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's so wrong. I think the main step when it comes to healing from it is just changing your perspective. Because yeah, like yes, I'm sure there, in certain like big name pastors where they're doing all these crazy things, and everyone's like, okay, well now like what church should I go to? Um,
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize like that's real hurt. That feels like betrayal, because you feel like you know somebody. But
Yeah.
I think it's also understanding like the only difference between them and another guy who like cheated on his wife or did something else is that he was a pastor and he was in the spotlight. Like it's
Right.
happening constantly, and whatever's
Right.
going on in your own life, like if that were to come to light at that scale, like it would kind of be the same thing. So obviously, I'm not
That's
trying to
true.
like compare people's, issues, but we all need Christ. And I think just understanding that a pastor isn't, your God and things like that really will be a
Yeah.
good step. Also, it was funny that you mentioned losing integrity in the church. I was reading 1 Corinthians yesterday, and Paul's talking about how, we have to discipline ourselves, because when I go and preach the gospel, I don't want people to be able to point out stuff and say, well, look at you.
Come
And
on.
like, how can you tell us stuff? So I think also when, like, not just for the people who are like, oh, I've been hurt by the church, but for the people who hurt the church, or the people who are causing that hurt, I think we
Right.
have to, as a community, because obviously the church is people, it's not, not four walls. I think as a
Yeah.
church, we have to decide and speak up when we see wrongdoings, and we have to speak up and say, hey, are you disciplining your flesh? Are you doing what the Lord has called you to do? Because
Come
that's the
on.
whole point of a church. We're trying to build each other up, but how can we do that if
Yeah.
we're not going to be honest about, everything that's going on? So,
No, that's really good. And I think I think it's one word that describes everything you said. It's accountability.
oh yeah,
People
yeah,
don't have accountability. People need accountability. Listen, I don't care if you're the
mhm.
executive senior global international
Yeah,
pastor, right? Like you need
yeah,
accountability. Like I don't
mhm,
care if you've been pastoring for 5 years, 10 years, 20
yeah,
years, 50 years. You need accountability. Why? You need a community of believers. You need
mhm,
people to mentor you. You need people that are going to watch over you, right? To keep you accountable, right? To help you to stay on track. Because a
yeah,
lot of times, right, these big name pastors or big name leaders, like they get to a place of like, oh yeah, I'm the guy. Like I've
mhm,
written 35 books. I
yeah,
have a
yeah,
I have a multi-site mega church. I'm the
yeah,
guy. You're not. You're a sinner,
yeah,
right? You're not. You're human. You're not.
yeah,
You're imperfect. All
yeah,
right. And so I think when we understand that, when we understand that right there is that, listen, you have to really know who God is. You have to really get to a place that like, listen, Lord, I know I'm imperfect. I know they're imperfect. So how can we work
yeah,
together to,
mhm,
Lord, to strive for you, Lord, to reach your goal
yeah,
and to live for you. And so listen, as we kind of wrap up this episode, number one thing is, listen, you have to name your hurt with honesty and call it
mhm,
out. But naming it is not minimizing it, because again, church hurt is real hurt. And so it's not minimizing it, but it's naming it and calling it out and confessing it to God. Right.
mhm,
And also understanding our role of forgiveness. Right. Listen,
mhm,
Christ has called us to forgive, whether
mhm,
you've been hurt by someone physically, mentally, emotionally, or verbally. There's
mhm,
still forgiveness. Again, not saying that you have to forget it, but God does call us to forgive,
yeah,
and He calls
mhm,
us to reconciliation and healing through our pain, through our hurt, and through our trials. And that is what Christ has done for us on the cross. And so
mhm,
He wants us, and as believers, we are called to forgive. And I encourage anyone listening to this podcast, listen, if you've experienced church hurt, again, mentally, physically, emotionally, or verbally, I want to encourage you guys to maybe, go seek counseling,
mhm,
find a safe community, and relearn to trust God, right? Relearn to trust people
mhm,
again, and to trust who God is, and to really understand His character.
mhm.
So, Kaya, so through this episode, right, we talked about a lot, we've covered a lot. So what would be kind of your last message to our listeners today about church hurt, real hurt?
Um, People are imperfect. That's why we need Christ. And I would just encourage anyone who has been hurt or is thinking about hurt that they had in the past they didn't really recognize, um, to, like what I said earlier, look at the Lord's character. At the end of the day, people say all you have is yourself. All you have is the Lord. He's the only person who's going to be able to reach that standard that we have,
Yeah.
that we try to place on people. And so I think learning that, and also coming to forgiveness. Christ doesn't say forgive because, they deserve the forgiveness. He says forgive because I forgive you. And
Come on.
I think we need to learn, like, I don't know how to better embody that. Are we going to experience church hurt, and are we going to go and, run to the world and hurt more people, or are we going to experience it and grow from it and learn, okay, this is what I'm
Come
not
on.
going to do. But you can only do that by knowing who Christ is and trying to embody him well. So it's my spill, I guess.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kaya. That was amazing. Well, thank you, Kaya,
you.
again for just joining us on the Champion Life podcast. It's been a great episode. Listen, to all our listeners, don't forget that God is here and He wants to heal you from your church hurt. Until next time, keep living the champion life.